Hello. Ooh, it's ready. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Food is going to start coming out, so if you can find your seats, that would be lovely. And then we're going to get started in just a minute so we can be respectful of everybody's time. And actually, I will go ahead and invite Rachel Freeman, Sexual Assault Center's president and CEO, has been at SAC for 20 years and just is an all-around incredible person. Started as an intern. This is her first and only job. So everyone give her a round of applause, and she'll go ahead and get us started.
Good morning. Thank you all so much for being here. As Lorraine said, my name is Rachel Freeman. I'm the president and CEO of the Sexual Assault Center. And I've had the privilege of working at this wonderful organization for 20 years. It's a very special place. Sexual assault is not always an easy topic to talk about, but to have this many people in a room to deal with sexual assault issues is really inspiring. Sorry, the music is competing with the music. I don't know how to do. Okay, I'll keep trying. I don't know. Thank you so much. Yay, thank you. Thank you. A couple quick thank yous. I would love to thank our sponsors. We've had a lot of sponsors make this event possible, but a special thank you to Fat Bottom. Josh and Ann Buckley, thank you so much for this amazing space. We're so glad to be here. And thank you to our platinum sponsors, Surgery Partners, Freeman Web Companies, and the Daily Family Foundation. And we have two amazing individuals who have chaired this event and made it all possible and spent a lot of hours, three individuals actually. Brittany Weiner over here at table 9, thank you so much. And Diego Aguarte, where is Diego? There he is, thank you so much. And Becca has been tremendously supportive of everything we do, but has put together this exhibit. She's chaired the exhibit. So thank you, Becca, Diego, and Brittany. We're so grateful. We have several elected officials in the room and law enforcement officials as well, and I just wanted to say thank you so much. We're so grateful that you spent your time, shared your time with us this morning by coming out. We know you have very full plates, so thank you. Couple other things just that I wanted to share before I turn it over to our keynote speaker. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and it's a time where we try to shine an extra bright light on the issue of sexual violence. Sexual assault is one of the most underreported crimes, yet it's also one of the most prevalent crimes. It happens to 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys before they turn 18. It also happens to 1 in 6 women and 1 in 33 men. In their lifetime, they experience a completed or an attempted rape at some point in their lifetime. And at that prevalence, it's astounding that we don't do more to try and end sexual violence. But the Sexual Assault Center exists to provide hope and healing to those who've been impacted by sexual violence and to try and end it. And we couldn't do it without the support of all of you in this room, whether it's financially or through raising awareness, spreading the word, helping us decrease the taboo of this topic. Whatever you do to play a role in helping end sexual violence, we are so very grateful. Our goal here at SafeCity this week is to raise $80,000. $80,000 is what it costs to keep our SAFE clinic, the Sexual Assault Forensic Exam Clinic, open for 1 month. The SAFE clinic provides a rape exam every other day on average. That means every other day somebody is sexually assaulted in our community. That's too much. We are so very glad to be here. We're so glad that we have this amazing facility that exists to support sexual assault survivors, but we also really want to do more to stop this crime. And that's why we continue to raise awareness and why events like this are so important. So thank you for helping us to do more, because nobody deserves to be sexually assaulted. This month is additionally special because it's our 45th anniversary of the organization being founded. We are so fortunate to have one of our co-founders with us today, Dr. Keith Wilson and his wife Pam. You'll hear from him very shortly. Dr. Wilson and a colleague saw an unmet need in our community 45 years ago and started this great organization. 45 years later, we have much more robust programming and a lot to be proud of. It is the 5th anniversary of opening our SAFE clinic, the Toe Hill SAFE Clinic, Sexual Assault Forensic Exam Clinic, named after our former executive director, Tim Toehill, who is also with us today. Tim had a dream that there was a better way to provide victim-centered, trauma-informed care to survivors, and it took us a really long time to see that dream to fruition, but we did, and we've done it in partnership with a lot of you in this room. A lot of our partners are here today, and we could not have done it without the partnership, and because of that, we are seeing more people come forward. So we're very proud that that's been operational for 5 years. We also have had a thriving bystander intervention program called SafeBar that has taken on new legs this year, and it provides bystander intervention tools for restaurant and alcohol serving venues to better respond to, recognize, and help to prevent sexual violence. So that's been an incredible thing that's really moved forward this year. We're also very proud of passing a few pieces of legislation, helping to pass a few pieces of legislation. Some incredible senators and representatives have really helped us move the conversation of sexual violence forward across our state. One of the bills that just got passed is an advocate confidentiality bill, and we have also worked to pass last year a bill that helps better track rape kits and allows for an expanded time for rape victims to report. So those are two very big things that we've been able to do in the last year. We also have served over 35,000 individuals in the 45 years that we've been open. 35,000 individuals have come through our doors to seek therapy, and we're very proud of that. As we think about as we think about the last 45 years and what's next, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank our staff. We have some staff in the building today, but this work it's hard. It's fulfilling, it's full of hope, but it's also hard, and we couldn't do it without the staff who show up every day. So thank you to our staff for continuing to wake up and come and make sure that those who need us get the best care possible. As we think about what comes next, it's a great time to look back and see where we came from and how we started. And that's why I would like to introduce Dr. Keith Wilson. Dr. Keith Wilson co-founded this organization as a Vanderbilt divinity student. And if that's not impressive enough, he holds 3 graduate degrees, one from the University of Tennessee, Vanderbilt University, and Boston University. He was in private mental health practice for 15 years in Texas. He was a therapist at Fort Campbell working with domestic violence for 2 years. He was a master resilience trainer and performance expert as an Army contractor for 8 years. He's worked with homeless veterans, and he currently practices as an overnight social worker in the Stanford Healthcare Emergency Department, where he's been for 6 years, assisting patients and their families as they experience trauma and the medical intervention required to recover. He's licensed to practice telehealth in California, Texas, Tennessee, and New Mexico, and he provides individual coaching to professionals looking to improve their performance in their professions. And finally, he has new opportunities developing in Sonoma wine country with mindfulness, flow, and wine tasting, which I think sounds amazing. So without further ado, it's my privilege to introduce you to SAC's co-founder, Dr. Keith Wilson.
The exciting part of getting settled on the stage, so give me just 1 second here. I did this presentation yesterday in an hour. I have 12 minutes today. That's why I have my stopwatch, and now we got it going. Make sure. I'll let you do it after all. So one of the things is it's always important to know what you don't know. And Rebecca and I had no idea what we didn't know. But the story is, and why I'm here today, is 45 years ago, we started at Vanderbilt Divinity School as students, and we had the idea of what needed to happen. But it starts before that, because if you don't know, an MDiv is a 3-year program. The first year you're just doing academics. The second and third year you're doing field placement. And so we started to have the concept of, wow, what are we going to do that's outside the box, because Vanderbilt is outside the box when it comes to divinity. And so we started to say, let's work in crisis. And so let's go ahead and move forward on there. So Rebecca is a graduate of Agnes Scott, grew up in North Carolina, and I really didn't know much about her until we really became involved in this particular endeavor. The sad news is, and why I'm the only one speaking, is she's now deceased. She died in 2016. So we don't have that information of how we began as we would collaborate with that now. The other part that's interesting about this story is in 10 years after we were founded, the whole center burned down, so all the records disappeared. And so part of what I'm doing today is showing you some of the things I found on the internet and other places, so that you have a feeling for what began. So Rebecca was the #1 partner. I'm the other partner. I'm from Albuquerque. I spent time at Hiram College with my bachelor's and working in trauma and death. And so that set us up for what we wanted to do. How many people have ever seen this building? Anybody know where that building is? The incubator for this thing. We got one person. This is the best housing that Vanderbilt has ever had, if you're a divinity student, because it's right on Music Row, 2 blocks from the school, and it's the place where students who are disciples of Christ, Christian Church disciples of Christ, have a chance to live and be in an affordable environment for going to school. As single first-year students, we were able to use this as our incubator to talk about what might be, and so this was the important place where the ideas started to happen. Part of the thing was that we became part of the Crisis Center, which at that point was done by D.D. Wallace. If anybody remembers the name D.D. Wallace, who's now Centerstone, we started to do our internship with them, and we'll tell you more about that. The Crisis Center was on Ellison Place. And if you look at Ellison Place, you will see no houses that look like that. So I cheated a little bit on my search, and we took a house that looked like the house that was on Ellison Place, so you'd have an idea of what we were working from. And so indeed, the Crisis Center was this 2-story building on Ellison Place, and we started there, and something important happened as we first started our internships there, and that is we kept getting phone calls from sexual assault survivors, and we recognized that there was no follow-up care at all happening in Nashville at that point. And so that's what got Rebecca and I thinking, what are we going to do different within the confines of working with institutions that existed in order to start this organization. The attitude in the 1970s was significantly impacted by this book, Against Our Will. Not a perfect book, but a book that helped to set the tone in the 70s for understanding rape as a power dimension, not a sexual gratification situation. With this book became the opportunities for more funding to take place, and the discussion and grassroots organizations throughout the nation of rape crisis centers began to happen because of this, and we followed on to that opportunity. So as you can see, myself and Rebecca were the beginners of understanding there was a need, and what you don't know means that you can do things that are unimaginable. And so we indeed started that concept, started talking to people, and what was important at this time in Nashville was, and it still is, I'm assuming, is that instead of just starting new programs, you try to work within organizations that are there. And so two important things. One, we were part of the Crisis Center, which was the Suicide Prevention Center, and so we had that going on with Dee Dee Wallace. And then the police department itself was highly involved in this. And go ahead and go to the next slide. With Carol Etherington. Now, quickly, anybody know Carol? Carol became incredibly famous later, as she was part of Doctors Without Borders and was part of the 1999 Nobel Peace Prize that was won by them. But when we met Carol, she was the advocate within the police department as a psychiatric nurse working with the victims to help gain more prosecutions. When we became aware of her, she thought this was a great idea for us to be completely connected so that we were able to utilize existing organizations to start responding more effectively and efficiently for victims of sexual assault. Now, this is my favorite slide of the whole thing I put together, because you never know when you need to be rescued by a social worker. Kathy Hearn happened to be one of our first volunteers. And Kathy, and as you can tell by my picture up there, I could not find a picture of Kathy anyplace on the internet. So I used one from Charlie Brown. And why it's still important and in the way it is because Kathy was very short, very much red hair, and really looked a lot like that caricature. My favorite story with her is when she decided to adopt a Great Dane, and the Great Dane was bigger than she was, which didn't last very long. But the importance of Kathy was that she understood what it meant to have an organization and the paperwork. Rebecca and I were great with the concept of what needed to happen, and so we were able to put together many things, but Kathy was the glue who did all the paperwork that I hate to do. And so she's the one who made sure we had all the articles of incorporation, all of those other kinds of things, and the reason she was able to do that is because she was, at that time, the administrator of the Center for Health Services at Vanderbilt. And so her job was indeed to be connected in the community and to have that ability to be an administrator and know what to do to make us viable at that point. So the unfortunate part about Kathy is that she's deceased as well. She died in 2009. And I invite you to go on the internet and read the obituaries of both Kathy and Rebecca to help you understand what else they did beyond the Sexual Assault Center. So, anybody recognize that building? Technically, this was our first administrative office for a month. This is West End United Methodist Church. And so the connection was that Hank Knight, one of the ministers there, was also connected to Vanderbilt. And we were, when you're first starting, you don't know for sure what you need. And so when people offer you things, you say, sure. So we had an administrative office here with phones and everything until only a month into our services, we recognized it didn't make much sense to be in two different places, to have administration in a different place than we had the services. And so indeed we moved our administrative offices out of there back to the same picture you saw before, because indeed this was the office we then shared with the Crisis Center. We had our own administrative space in place for 24-hour volunteers answering the phones in the Rape and Sexual Abuse Center. You'll notice that our name was not Sexual Assault Center at that point, but indeed Rape and Sexual Abuse Center. That changed later, but that was indeed our initial name that we started with here in Nashville. This is from the Center for Nonprofit Management that was started 10 years after we began. And you'll notice all these big issues that you're supposed to have in place in order to start a nonprofit. Well, as I said earlier, we didn't know any of that. And so we started, and we had the cooperation of many organizations, particularly the police department and the Crisis Center from Dee Dee Wallace, and we were able to accomplish this because we didn't know we couldn't do it, so we did it. These are actually original documents that I found in my garage 45 years later that help us know exactly what our goals were as the Rape and Sexual Abuse Center. And so if you look at that, the goals that we have had then and have now are very similar. And so one of the fortunate parts here of being able to put this presentation together for the center is we now have recaptured these documents that now help us know how we began, even though everything burned up many years ago. So funding is the big thing, and if you don't know, one of the first things that was on that list is funding. Well, we didn't think about funding when we first began. We knew we needed a little bit, and so fortunately we did contact the Junior League, and they gave us $5,000 in that first part. We also did other foundation fundraising, and once again, Kathy Hearn was primarily involved in that part of our operation. WSM News was a really good partner. I understand is still a good partner. One of my favorite events was when WSM News agreed to film me being maced as part of our demonstration in a parking lot on how effective one could be using chemical restraint to be safer. And so indeed, someplace in the archives of WSM is a picture of Rebecca shooting me with mace to be effective. One does not forget those kinds of things, and so we're ever grateful for Channel 4 of providing that kind of education into our community. I also was able to find things in the newspapers, and so indeed our first workshop was at Vanderbilt as we helped to provide the education to the national community about rape in both its historical way as well as our response to it. And so Vanderbilt, once again, was a good connector to us. We also, of course, began with volunteers and did volunteer training from the very beginning because we couldn't do this without volunteers, and one of our volunteers was kind enough to write that nice article in the paper. And of course, living on Ellison Place, Exodin was also a partner for us. We had a couple different benefit concerts, and Amy Bevel in that particular picture was part of the second concert we did as a way of providing education to our community as well as fundraising, because of course the Junior League wanted us to have matching funds. So that's the brief overview, gives you a little bit of the view of what happened. It's important to recognize that I was with the center for like 18 months, and then I left Nashville and went and did a clinical internship in Houston, Texas. Rebecca is the reason that this center still exists, because she did all the hard work. It's easy to start something, it's much harder to maintain it. And so Rebecca was there doing the hard work of keeping things going long after we had the initial splash to get started, and forever grateful for her and the work that she did. I reconnected with her when we came back for the 25th anniversary. Tim found us and said, come back. And so Rebecca and I got to meet again and get reconnected, and then she and I stayed in contact until her death in 2016. The good news is we're here. The work of the Sexual Assault Center continues. It's always marvelous to think that you can have a vision and things can come together and it makes a significant impact. It's probably the thing I'm most proud of in my life, is that this organization still exists through the hard work of the people at this table. I thank you and hope you have a rest of a marvelous breakfast.
Thank you so much, Keith. I appreciate you making the trip out. I think we all next year want to your wine and relaxation, what was it? Mindfulness. Mindfulness and wine for breakfast next year. I'm here to just talk about money, but not just about money and our fundraising goal. But just what those donations allow us to do. So I'm Lorraine McGuire. I'm the Vice President of Community Relations and Development. And part of my role is building relationships in our community. And over the last year, we have built such incredible partnerships in this community, and we want to continue to do that. So the Metro City Council Women's Caucus, they helped pass a resolution just a few weeks ago encouraging all alcohol serving establishments to become Safe Bar trained. TABC is also involved in Safe Bar. CMA has signed on as a sponsor of Safe Tracks, which is a new program we have. We have Nashville's new night mayor here. You have to really enunciate that, Benton, because sometimes it sounds like I'm saying the new nightmare. The new night mayor in Nashville. The Nashville Visitors Corporation and Convention and Visitors Corporation, the Tennessee Legislature. One of the other bills that we helped to pass this year was that in every single police jurisdiction, a SART team, which is a sexual assault response team, has to be implemented. So all of the resources in that area come together to see what gaps are missing. That's another thing we were able to do. We didn't get everything we wanted in this year's session, but we did make excellent relationships with a lot of people in the legislature. Our relationship with Fat Bottom has been fantastic. They even made a beer for us called Hope. It's a Pilsner. 100% of the proceeds come back to SAC, and was one of the funnest projects that I've ever gotten to work on. So thank you to Josh and Ann. I just kind of was joking with Josh one day, and I was like, hey, you want to make us a beer? And he said, okay. I was like, oh, this is good. This is why you always ask, because you just never know. So as it was mentioned, the goal for SafeCity in total was $80,000. We have $38,000 to raise in the room. But please don't think about it as just a donation and giving money and a regular ask that you always hear. Every single dollar that's donated creates a healing story for a survivor. Studies show over and over that the earlier that somebody receives help, especially children, it decreases the long-term effects that it has on their life. So this is why sexual assault is considered a public health crisis, because the long term of trauma and effects that it has affects our society as a whole. And Sexual Assault Center's job is to mitigate that and to step in. And that is only possible because of people like you. And so thanks to the Hayes Foundation, the first $20,000 is going to be matched. So every dollar that you give will become $2. So please take that into consideration. There's several ways you can give. We try to make it as easy as possible. So you have QR codes on your table. You can text to give. Oh, good. There it was back there when I pointed. You can text to give. You can also, you could put check, cash, or if you'd like us to send you an invoice, there are a few envelopes on your table. You can fill those out and just take it to the SAC table when you're done. You can share this event and ask other people to give as well. But that is what our goal is today. So we're just asking all of you to really take into consideration what is at stake here in our community and how the people in this room can truly make a difference. I would like to introduce Becca Fuquay. She is the Vice President of Marketing and Employee Experience Manager at Studio Bank. She is one of our board members. She started as a Young Leaders intern and has been instrumental. She serves on our finance committee. She serves on our executive committee. She chairs the event committee. She chaired this year's breakfast and also last year's breakfast, co-chaired with some few other people. And without further ado, I would like to introduce Becca. I forgot to mention two really great partnerships with the National Guard that is starting and with Crosspoint Church. I had those in side notes and I missed them. So we're also so grateful for those.
Thank you. Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Keith. I'm really sad that my headshot of a Charlie Brown character is not on this slide right now. That would have been fitting. Thank you guys all for being here today. It really does mean a lot to see this room so full. I'd like to ask you guys a question. What were you wearing? Have you ever been asked this question before? As if your outfit had anything to do with what happened to you in a given day? Did your t-shirt cause the fender bender that you got into? Did the shoes that you were wearing influence your ability to pass a test in school? Did your pants make you late for work? The idea that clothes can cause or prevent something bad from happening to you boils down to the core belief that if people look or behave a certain way, that nothing bad will happen to them. It's a myth that makes it easy to suggest that sexual assault only happens to people who bring it upon themselves by making certain choices. Now, a little history about why we chose to confront this question today. In 1992, a woman was raped by the driving instructor who was taking her on her very first driving lesson. She reported the rape, and the perpetrator was arrested and prosecuted and eventually convicted and sentenced to jail. 7 years later, he appealed the sentence and took the case all the way to the Italian High Court, where it was argued that because the victim wore very tight jeans, she had to have helped him remove the jeans, and so it was no longer considered rape, and the conviction was overturned and the driving instructor was released. Enraged by the verdict, like I hope that story enraged all of you guys, the women in the Italian parliament protested by wearing jeans to work the next day. And over decades since, activists all over the world have recognized what we now call Denim Day each April. The demonstration asked community members and elected officials, business professionals, and students to make a social statement with their fashion statement. Wearing jeans on this anniversary has become an international symbol of protest against erroneous and destructive attitudes about sexual violence. So the stories that you're going to hear today are just a few examples of why we felt called to transform this space into an exhibit inspired by this question. It's going to be open and free to the public to experience today and tomorrow, each day from 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. right here in this room. You can see a little sneak peek of what the walls will look like after we flip the room. The stories in the exhibit are shared by actual survivors, and the outfits that you will see were assembled based on the descriptions that they offered. We understand that the event may be triggering to some and will contain descriptions of violence that may be upsetting or difficult to read. So we're making sure that resources are available on site should you need support during your visit. Our goal is to raise awareness and challenge the harmful questions and responses that place blame on the person harmed rather than the person that chose to harm them. Now, I'd like to read a poem that was also a part of the inspiration for our program this morning. There's a copy of it in the program that you all received when you got here. It's called What I Was Wearing by Mary Simmerling. Was this, from the top, a white t-shirt, cotton, short-sleeved and round at the neck. This was tucked into a jean skirt, also cotton, ending just above the knees and belted at the top. Underneath all this was a white cotton bra and white underpants, though probably not a set. On my feet, white tennis shoes, the kind one plays tennis in, and then finally, silver earrings and lip gloss. This is what I was wearing that day, that night, that 4th of July in 1987. You may be wondering why this matters, or even how I remember every item in such detail. You see, I have been asked this question many times. It has been called to my mind many times. This question, this answer, these details. But my answer, much awaited, much anticipated, seems flat somehow, given the rest of the details of that night, during which, at some point, I was raped. And I wonder, what answer, what details would give comfort, could give comfort to you, my questioners? Seeking comfort where there is, alas, no comfort to be found. If only it were so simple. If only we could end rape by simply changing our clothes. I remember also what he was wearing that night, even though it's true that no one has ever asked. Wow. Reading that in front of this room is surreal. It's surreal because the outfit that Mary describes in her poem is almost identical to the outfit that I was wearing the night that I was assaulted at 16 years old. While the handful of people I've shared that incident with over the years avoided asking me the question we're confronting here today, the victim-blaming framework that society conditioned me for was already living inside of my head. I hesitated to share my story with many at the time because I knew that I had done something wrong to cause it. Over the years, certain people, some that are here in this room, have taught me what a lovely part of the world I am. They've helped me learn how to trust myself, that my peace is worth nurturing, and that healing is possible. 15 years later, that voice no longer lives in my head. I hope and I wish the same for every survivor And I hope and wish that that framework continues to shift for every future generation to come. We owe it to them. Recently, I heard a sentiment that went something like, crumbs are not cake. She was saying that we can stop taking crumbs from people because cake is real. And I want to apply that to what we're discussing today. Deep, whole, meaningful healing is possible. SAC really is one of very few direct service providers who are not only providing emergency crisis intervention, advocacy, and trauma-informed therapy services, but are also trying to change the systems that are perpetuating sexual violence in the first place through legislative advocacy. And we aren't doing any of this alone. We're making sure that we are sharing our platform with individuals that have experienced sexual violence because they have a voice. And we are committed to making sure that those voices are informing how we show up in the SAFE clinic, in therapy sessions, in prevention trainings, and in policy meetings with the city and state. SAC is the cake in this fight. So this is where we need your help. Your financial support helps us provide quality direct service to victim survivors in every stage of their healing journey, as well as our efforts to try and build a better Nashville and a better state of Tennessee for everybody that lives here. We truly believe that we all deserve a safe and compassionate community to thrive in. A different world is possible, but we can only do that together. I would like to thank everybody that contributed to this exhibit with their personal stories. Thank you so much for trusting us. I really am so honored to share this space with you. And thank you all again for being here, for providing a safe and compassionate space to talk about difficult topics, for helping us bring hope and healing to survivors of sexual violence. And if what has been shared here has called you to support that work, then I invite you to consider making a donation this morning. Regardless of the size of the gift, you will help ensure that every person who comes through the SAC doors receives the best possible care. We're going to start a timer for 3 minutes. Catherine, is it up? Okay. So let's spend those 3 minutes quietly. Let's process what you've heard this morning. Let's reflect on how it made you feel. And this is also your opportunity to donate to this meaningful fundraiser. The fact that you're here this morning shows me that you want to be a part of the work that the center does every day to show up for victim survivors with compassion and with hope. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Becca, where are you? I'm going to give you a hug in a little bit, but one more round of applause for Becca. That was amazing. It takes a lot of courage to stand up and share what you shared, and it's extremely meaningful to all of us. So thank you. Thank you to everybody for sitting through that 3 minutes and reflecting on what SAC does, what SAC means, and thank you for spending your time with us today. We promised we would wrap up our program by 9 o'clock, and it is 8:58. So I am not ever early. I'm really excited that we're 2 minutes early. I would really love to encourage all of you to take a few minutes after you finish your breakfast to walk around. We've got a swag table out back if you want any SAC stuff. We have plenty. I've been told that the Hope beer can be bought today. So if you would like to leave with a 6-pack or a few, you can do that today too. And it is delicious. I can vouch for that. But most importantly, I just wanted to thank you all one more time for being here, for giving of your time, your resources, and helping us do this very important and meaningful work. I said it earlier, I wish we didn't have to exist. Would love to figure out a way to put ourselves out of business because this crime doesn't exist anymore. But until then, we're going to keep doing this good fight together, and it will take all of us to change the system. Thank you to all of you. Have a great day. That's it. Thank you.